Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever CHOMP virtual online summer camp. We, of course, are not at Miramar Park. We do miss being at the park, but I'm glad that you're here to join us all for this just virtual extravaganza. I'm Audra Boo, and I get to be your summer camp counselor. You'll be going on a ride with me throughout the whole week, so that should be super fun. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, CHOMP is put together, born out of Executive Dow Constantine's local food initiative as a celebration of all things fresh and local in King County. And hopefully you have been to a CHOMP before. It's super lit. You got just everything from, local farmers, ways to be sustainable in your living. You got music, there's competitions, all kind of fun stuff. So, and if you were there last year, and hopefully we'll be together again in the future. There's even a really dope jam-a-thon. It's not called the jam-a-thon. I wish it was. But it's basically where I get to taste your jelly with some other folks, and we get to vote on the best one. So lit. Obviously, because I like jelly. Anywho, this week's programming is made possible by King County Parks and supported by our friends at Fremont Brewing and Cafe Vita. Now, if you want to access the resource library, you can do so on the website chomplocal.org. That's CHOMPLOCAL.org. And there you'll find just tons of resources. There's even a really awesome map that you should check out, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. You can also follow us on the social medias at King County CHOP. And yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a dope week. I'm glad that you're here with me. So we're gonna kick off things in a moment, but I do want to let you all know that all of this CHOMP summer camp content, it's gonna be available on demand probably a week after we do all this. So you'll see it, you get excited about it, you want to tell someone else that you came and got to witness, then they'll get to go back to and see what was missed. So that is a thing you'll get to do. And with all of that said, I think we can jump into some programming.
Every year, CHOMP teams up with a local nonprofit organization that's working to improve access to healthy, locally grown food in King County. And this year, we're excited to announce that there's two beneficiaries. One of them is the Black Farmers Collective, and the other is Wakulima USA. The Black Farmers Collective is a mutual aid network of local farmers of color. Yes, baby, farmers of color, focusing on farmland acquisition and farmer development. Currently, they operate two farm sites. The Yes Farm, it's a 1.5 acre site in central Seattle, and they have a new 4-acre site in Woodinville. Wakulima USA is a farming collective focusing on cultural affirmation, widespread access to healthy food, and fostering the growth of farmers and food entrepreneurs. Wakulima promotes sustainable farming by using underutilized land and culturally relevant food and income for growers, right? Transforming it, growing it into a whole thing so that it's culturally relevant and it makes sense and it makes dollars. So if you want to learn more about both of these amazing organizations, you can do so. We have links to both of them available on the website, chomplocal.org. Go ahead, check them out. And go buy some just amazing produce from these farmers, these up and coming entrepreneurial farmers.
Coming up next, we're going to take a virtual garden tour and get a virtual cooking demonstration from Dr. Sally Brown, who is a soil scientist and a professor at the University of Washington, who just also happens to be a former chef. Dr. Brown is going to take us virtually into her garden and show us where she plants and grows zucchini, potatoes, and onions using loop compost. And then she's going to take us into the kitchen and show us how to cook these delicious zucchini potato fritters, which I'm super excited about because I like zucchini and potato and all those things together. So that should be super, super fun. Now, what is loop compost, right? So maybe you've seen the trucks around that are the King County Loop. Well, just so happens that loop is a fertilizer replacement and it's made from biosolids. Yes, let's get scientific, boo. Biosolids. This means that this particular fertilizer replacement is produced by the cleaning, recycling, and transforming 100% of the food and poop that goes into your toilets and drains. That is what I said. Food and poop, my friends, turned into a thing to make a thing that we can use on a thing. Yes, that's right, because, nature makes no waste. So that then is used to grow crops, bigger crops and trees. It's used by commercial farmers. And, it's like, what alternative, right? I mean, food and poop transform. That is so scientific. Now, loop generates a healthier and more productive soil that's better for people, plants, and really the planet in general, right? So it is something that we should be thinking about using moving forward. For those of you who like the green thumb, this could be for you. Loop is environmentally responsible, protects fish and other wildlife, and does not cause nutrients to run off into the waters. It helps the soil hold rainwater and runoff like a sponge, which keeps dirty water from flowing into Puget Sound. That's dope, right? It's not going into the sound or your rivers or your streams. Basically, get to know Loop as a compost. But right now, in this moment, let's also get to know Dr. Sally Brown and some more information and that recipe. Sally, let's do it.
Hi, I'm Sally Brown. I'm a soils professor at University of Washington, and we're very fortunate that we have a house outside of Cle Elum. And my husband here talked me into starting a garden, and I've gotten fully addicted. One of the reasons that I've gotten so addicted is because I use the biosolids compost and it doesn't require a great deal of skill. I'm primarily a cook, not a grower, but I can fake it really well with this stuff. So onions here are one of the greatest things to grow. You get your onion starts and they come these little teeny weeny things and you plant them at a good spacing apart and it's really neat to watch them. Here you can see how they've just taken off. They love the biosolids compost, these guys. And then other thing that responds well and stores well are carrots. Carrots also love the biosolids compost and the wood ash, and these are just starting to get to where you can see a little bit of the orange root that looks like a carrot. They'll get really big. And then here is a kind of zucchini. If you don't eat all your zucchini, which can be a real challenge, these turn into a hard squash. Potatoes are another great thing to grow here. In fact, they thrive. What's different for potatoes, though, is they really need a friable, light soil because you want those potatoes to have the space to grow big. Okay, today you get zucchini potato fritters. These are fabulous, big hit with the family. First thing, always wash your vegetables. Okay, I'm gonna cut the ends off. One of the wonderful things about living in King County, you can put your food scraps in the food yard bin, but we are able to compost at home. So these go right in the compost bin over here. Next thing is to grate the zucchini. Zucchini is pretty easy and straightforward to grate. It works really well to grate it right into the container where you want to keep it. And the main thing here you have to be careful of is to preserve your fingers. It really doesn't take as long as you think it's going to. The other thing that's possible is you can use a Cuisinart to do this. I have the attachment. I suppose with a PhD I could figure out how to do that, but I grate it by hand and try and save the fingers. So you have your grated zucchini. It's a lovely bowl full, and zucchini is all water, and you want to get out some of the water. So what I do is I pour a lot of salt, and don't worry, I'm going to rinse this, and I toss it with the zucchini, and I use my fingers to make sure that the salt exposure is not just limited to the top layer of zucchini, and get it good and mixed. Then get it off my fingers and put it away till later on. You should leave your zucchini. It doesn't need to be very long. 20 minutes is more than enough to get some of the water out of the zucchini, and I'll show you how we do that in a bit. Okay, these are the onion tops that we borrowed from the garden. I'm doing a pretty fine dice here. This will give a nice touch of oniony flavor to these. It's fine to do this with finely minced onion. If you don't have scallions, you can use a red onion. If you have scallions, white part, green part, all good. Very forgiving.
Thank you.
These go in the big bowl that you're going to use to mix everything. I got some oregano from the garden. It's done a fabulous job of taking over the area right behind our deck, and we get a lot of very happy bees, and a lot of what we cook now has oregano in it. When you chop this stuff, it just has a wonderful, wonderful aroma. And then that goes right in your major mix bowl. One way that I changed the original recipe was the oregano. Another way was the feta cheese. Quantities are not so important. I just got a block from the supermarket, and you make sure your feta cheese is crumbled. This is going to be the bowl that gets everything all mixed together and that you then use to fry from. Okay, time to grate the potato. One of the deals with grating potatoes is it's good to use the bigger ones for this. The little ones, you have much more of a finger hazard potential. I make these fritters from our potatoes and our zucchini as a great way to use up stuff from the garden. The original recipe calls for about equal proportions of zucchini and potato. You can vary this depending on what you have a lot of. So after the zucchini's been sitting in the salt, I fill that bowl with water. Helps rinse the excess salt off the zucchini, and the zucchini at this point has lost a lot of its liquid. So I pour the whole batch through a colander, get rid of the water, and then squeeze the zucchini dry and dump it in this big mixing bowl. The way I squeeze the zucchini, I'm also going to squeeze the moisture out of the potatoes. That's, again, you don't want watery mush, you want crispy. Crispy is critical to getting my husband to eat it. It also means that it spatters less when you cook it. There are many reasons to get the extra moisture out. And you can see the water coming out. I'll show you something neat about squeezing potatoes in just a minute. Okay, if you look closely here, it looks just like muddy water or weird water. I'll come back to this because the starch in the potato water will settle out at the bottom, and if you let it just sit for a few minutes here, you can dump the water off the top and then use the starch on the bottom, and it helps these stick together. Okay, I load this up with pepper. It doesn't need any additional salt because you'll still have some residue salt from the zucchini. You can use already ground pepper. I love grinding my own pepper. You can see there's a lot of black right here. Recipe calls for a little bit of flour and a little bit of cornmeal. And why measure? I like the coarser cornmeal. To make sure it binds together, recipe also calls for some eggs. The amount of eggs that you need is really a judgment call. I'm using 2 here. I spend fortune not on clothing, but on designer eggs. So you mix it, you dump them on top. You can even see when they're mixed how bright that yellow is from these yolks. And now let's see if we have the magic from the potatoes, and dump the extra water. And you can see when I tilt it, you see that white on the bottom? Mm-hmm. That's the starch. And time to get your hands nice and dirty. You want to make sure that you break up the clumps of zucchini. You want to make sure that you're getting a good mixture, and the cheese and the scallions get mixed in. If you have a kid and you let that kid loose in mixing this stuff up with their hands, you will have one happy kid that will not only like eating these better, but will have a big sense of pride and ownership because they got to mix this. Olive oil is really good. You can put some butter in with the olive oil if you want. Easy way to test and see if your pan is hot enough is get your hand with a little water, and you want a noise. That's a little bit of a noise. You want a little more pronounced noise. So I'm going to stand here and wait for a minute to let it get hotter. Okay, we should be pretty hot now. So I'm going to take a handful and I'm going to just set it down, and it makes a nice noise. I can usually, in this size pan, get 5 or so in. I'm trying not to make them too high because you don't want raw potato. It does not taste very good. When you first start frying these, the pan isn't quite as hot as it gets over time, and so you have to be patient. And sometimes you have to walk into the other room. Sometimes you have to engage the family in unnecessary conversation just to kill time while you're waiting for these to be done, because they're really better if they're crispier and if the potatoes are fully cooked. You can see on the edges they're getting nice and brown. That's usually a good sign that it's time to turn them. You may have to stop a little on the sides to make sure they're not stuck together. Oh, and you can smell them now. And see here we have one that's a little stuck. That one not quite as done as you want. So we'll move the pan so it gets better heat on the other side. And now again, you want to make sure these cook enough, so it's time to start cleaning up your mess from getting all the stuff ready while you let them cook and get fully crispy. I'm going to call these done to start for our first round. And I have a platter with some paper towels, because even if olive oil is the best thing in the world and these aren't greasy, they're still greasy. So, and here, you make it look prettier by turning it over to the side where you know it got browner. Okay.
Well. As you know, the CHOMP team has been out visiting tons of local farms over the last few weeks, and one of the favorites is the Henna You Pick Blueberry Farm. So here is a short clip featuring Henna and Nayab Khan, the owners of Henna You Pick Blueberry Farm, talking about a few of the things that you can make with your fresh blueberries. Sounds like recipes, baby. But first, here is a little short something from our CHOMP partner, Fremont Brewing.
The Fresh Hot program starts very early in the morning, right around 3 or 4 a.m. We're out deciding which of the fields are going to be harvested. Harvest those from the vine. They get lightly processed, somewhere around 5, 7 o'clock. And then we put it into these things called gaylords, which are just huge cardboard boxes. Put them in a refrigerated truck, lots of ventilation, get on the road, cross the mountains. From Fremont, we put it into our walk-in refrigerator, and then we lift it up and we shake the hops around 3,500 pounds each turn into this mash tun. So that's pretty much as fresh as you're gonna get. And then within a couple days after canning, you're gonna have that beer in your hand. This makes us excited. This is what we live for every year because nothing's like it. Nothing smells like it, nothing tastes like it, nothing requires this amount of work, this amount of teamwork. From Yakima straight to the neighborhood of Fremont, you don't get fresher hops, you don't get fresher beer, and you can only get it one time a year.
First thing that we as a family like doing with our blueberries is eating them fresh. Very important, okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can go through buckets and buckets of blueberries, like, okay, in a week, like, yeah, close to 100 pounds, like.
We are one of our biggest customers.
Yes, that's what we would say. And Nayab is a champ of the blueberry pies. He's always experimenting with the different varieties that we have in the field and making sure which one is good for the pies, right?
Yeah, it looks like one of the best combinations. Nectarines and blueberry pie. I am looking forward to tasting.
We use the blueberries in the smoothies. We use the blueberries in our pancakes, and then we have our oatmeal with blueberries, right? A lot of baking with blueberries, like blueberry muffins, blueberry scones, and blueberry crumble. You can visit the CHOMP local website and get ideas about different recipes that people can do with the stuff that they get from the local farms, like for example blueberries, blueberry peach pie, or blueberry smoothies. And yeah, it's a virtual event, but do take advantage of it.
You can connect with local farmers.
Yeah, you can connect with local farmers and just know more about them, right? And behind the scenes what they're doing.
All right, Mikey the Rad Scientist has been singing and performing nature and science inspired music for children for now over 10 years and is really one of the just loveliest people that I've ever got the privilege to meet and hang out with. Now, during quarantine, Mikey teamed up with partner Kaylee Cole, also awesome musician, to provide a fun science-themed live streaming show that was even seen on King 5 News, on Evening Magazine, and in Seattle's Child Magazine. The show has been popular with kids and parents looking for a fun and educational activity to be a part of their online learning. You can tune in to Mikey Mike the Rad Scientist every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 11:30 on Facebook. Friends, neighbors, loves, all of you, Mikey the Rad Scientist.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on his farm he had a... Well, here's a fun project that you can do at home, and all you need are 3 things. Some heavy whipping cream from your favorite local farm, a jar, and some marble. And all you gotta do is pour the whipping cream into the jar with the marbles. I made sure to wash my marbles just in case. And then put the lid on the jar. And then shake. And pretty soon, we're gonna have butter! Let's learn about the science while we shake, shall we?
To understand what's going on here, we have to understand that milk is an emulsion. Now, most of the time, water and oil don't mix. But in an emulsion, they do. But they don't stay that way forever. In milk, there are tiny droplets of fat that are suspended in the water. And when we put the marbles into the container and start shaking it, those little molecules start to clump together and stick together in bigger and bigger clumps until the whole mixture turns into 2 different substances, which is butter and buttermilk. So pretty cool stuff.
Hey Mikey, wait. We should put some salt in it.
Oh, good call. Pinch of salt in. Keep shaking. I don't know if you can see this, but now there's like milk and butter in there. I'm gonna keep shaking and see what happens. Hang on. All right, so I'm gonna pour off this milk that's in there. Look at that, looks like regular milk. And quite a bit of it. It looks a lot thinner than the heavy cream that went in there. Tastes like milk. And look at that, it's butter! Okay, the butter is ready, and I'm gonna pour it out onto the plate. Look at that. Looks like a butter with a little bit of milk on it. And I'm gonna take some of this. Don't eat the marbles. And I'm going to spread it on this bread. Look at that, it spreads just like butter. Fancy that. And, bon appetit. Mmm. Oh, it tastes just like butter, really fresh butter. Fresh butter, what do you think?
I don't ever want to buy butter again.
Unless you buy it from a local farm. Bye! There you have it, folks. Enjoy!
If you have been to CHOMP in the years past, then you might be familiar with Patty Pan. Now, what I did not know about Patty Pan is that it is run by Deborah Gartenstein, and I'm probably saying that last name all wrong, might be Gartenstein, but Deborah I actually met during a webinar about farmers markets. Very random, very awesome. Well, we do miss the smell of all the fresh veggies that would be cooking on the grill at Miramore, but we're excited to have Deborah, Patty Pan's founder, with us to talk about families of vegetables and how you can prepare a few. If you're craving Patty Pan, there's home delivery for you available, as well as some on-site selling at some farmers markets around town. You can check out pattypan.coop, that is pattypan.coop for more information.
Hey, I'm Dev. I am the founder and one of the owners at Patty Pan Cooperative. We are a thoughtful, progressive food business located in Shoreline, Washington. We do everything from farmers market concessions when we can, to catering, to home meal delivery. And today I'm just going to show you a bunch of vegetable families, because vegetables, like people, grow in families. So the first vegetable family I'm going to talk about is the Brassica family. They include broccoli, cauliflower, cabbages, a lot of really hardy leafy greens like kale and collard greens. They're also known as cruciferous vegetables because when they get big, the stalks split, and they split in a cross pattern. So here is kale. We have a couple of different kinds. This is a curly green kale. Once upon a time, you only saw kale in salad bars, and not the part that you eat, the part that you decorate with the ice. This is a red curly kale, very similar to the green curly kale, but it's a little more delicate. When you have a box of the dark green and a box of the red, and you open them up, the red is more likely to look like it's had a bad hair day. It's just like smashed on top because it's more delicate. The stems are pretty burly. So if you want to get the leaves away from the stem, you just hold it like that. This is black kale, even though it's not black. It's also known as dino kale, lacinato kale, Tuscan kale. It's a kale with many names. This is a red Russian kale, named red for the purple vein. And these are collard greens, which really are very similar to kale. And like kale, you can get the stems out of them like that. And my favorite thing to do with these is just chop them up, saute them with a little bit of olive oil and some garlic, and then you can add something acidic at the end, like lemon juice or balsamic vinegar, and it's just really, really tasty. Green cabbage is also a brassica. Brussels sprouts are really like tiny cabbages. So cut it in half, and then this looks like a tiny version of the same thing. Which I used to take cabbage for granted, and now I just think it's one of the more wonderful vegetables around. You can do so much with it. It's wonderful cooked in just about anything. You make slaws, shred it up, and just season it with whatever. This is a Napa cabbage, which is the best kind for kimchi. These are bok choy cabbages, baby bok choy, grown-up bok choy. They're really just the same plant. One's older than the other, so it's grown to be bigger. And the main reason I use the baby bok choy is because this is a lot of food. I rarely use it all in a single meal, and this is just, you know, start to finish, you got your vegetable. This is broccolini, which is a variety of broccoli with a stem that's more tender than the broccoli that we most commonly eat. And you notice here, it's flowering. And, you know, a lot of these plants, because they're cousins, when they're growing, they look really similar to each other. Like kale, at a certain point in its growth cycle, is going to sprout these same kinds of yellow flowers. Collard greens are very similar to the leaves that you find on cauliflower and broccoli, pretty closely related. This is a kohlrabi. Kohlrabi is like a cabbage, except it's solid. You can eat this raw or cooked. You can grate it up. You can make slaw out of it. This is a turnip. This is a rutabaga. Turnip is an ancient vegetable. They were eating it in Roman times. Rutabaga is really only about 200 years old, and a rutabaga is actually a cross between a cabbage and a turnip. Go figure. The next vegetable family I'm going to talk about are the alliums, or the onion family. And they're actually cousins of lilies. So you have allium, lily, they come from the same root. Here you have a conventional, standard, everyday onion. Here you have the same vegetable, much younger. So you see you have the stems here, they're really fresh. You can cut them up and use them like the way you use green onions. These are fresh red onions. They just have a much brighter flavor. Here's a shallot, which is kind of somewhere between an onion and a garlic. This is a fresh shallot. It's garlic, beautiful red garlic. A lot of people find leeks intimidating to work with because they have a lot of dirt in them. And the trick is you just got to know where to find the dirt in them. It tends to be in the outer layers, right around where the light green part meets the darker green part. The best way to cut and clean a leek is take off the top, then you cut it a little bit off the end, cut it in half lengthwise, and then you find the dirt. So it's just in those outer layers. And so you want to rinse it after you cut it lengthwise. Keep it together more as much as you can when you rinse it, because if you just separate it out, you know, it kind of starts to curl. It gets really hard to cut. So a leek, make wonderful soup. And these are chives, which really are oniony herbs. And when you work with alliums, the onion family, it's nice to use a bunch of different ones, sometimes in the same dish, and you get some really nice layers of flavor there. And I'm going to show you just some other random vegetables. These are Romano beans, and these are your everyday green beans. So as you see, these are a lot bigger than these, so if you get impatient trimming green beans, you get a lot more green bean for the amount of work you do with the Romano beans. They also have great flavor, and they're a height of the summer seasonal vegetable, so they have that special appeal as well. Now these are dandelion greens, just like the dandelions that grow in your yard. They're actually great for your liver and your kidneys. They tend to be kind of bitter. The best thing I ever did with them, cooked them with some unsweetened cranberry juice, and the bitter and the sour worked really nicely together. There's a parsnip. It looks like a carrot. You don't want to eat it raw, but it's a great soup stock vegetable. It just gives a lot of depth and sweetness. This is chard, and these are beets. And beets and chard are actually very closely related. You can eat beet greens, and when farmers select for the beet greens that are biggest and then breed those plants, then 8 or 10 plant generations later, you're gonna get chard rather than beets. But if you notice, the colors that the chard grows in are similar to colors that you see in beets. So there you have it, some of the wonders of the vegetable kingdom.
Up next, we've got a video from King Conservation District exploring the difference between food security and food sovereignty. Join Clyde Sampson of King Conservation District's Community Agricultural Program as she goes on a journey to, teach you the difference. If you're unfamiliar with King Conservation District, their agency helps to manage King County's natural resources through education and conservation efforts. You can learn more at kingcd.org.
Hey everyone, I'm Cly, and today I'm going to talk to you about the differences between food security and food sovereignty, because these two terms are used so much in a lot of food justice conversations, and I just thought that we should sit down, take the time, and unpack all of these definitions so we can better understand each other and our visions for a better food system. So keep on watching and make sure to visit kingcd.org to learn more about community agriculture in King County. Before we dive into food security and food sovereignty, I'd like to address the problem. And the problem is hunger. Hunger is an age-old problem. I mean, we are living in 2020. We have these fancy cars and fancy phones, and yet hunger still exists. And there's a reason for that. Because hunger is not the real problem. It is a symptom of a much larger problem, and that is the overproduction of food, the unequal access to food. Our food system is very complicated, so it's very important to address that hunger is not the real problem here. Moving forward, we are also living in a pandemic. Feeding America predicts that in 2020, due to the effects of COVID-19, 54 million people will face hunger in America. That is about 16% of the US population. And so this is a very important time to reevaluate how we distribute our food in an equitable and just way. All right, let's talk about food security. Food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Okay, sounds kind of complicated, so let's go to the grocery store and break this definition down. Here are the 4 dimensions of food security. All right, we got availability, access, utilization, and stability. Availability is simply the amount of grocery stores near you and how much a grocery store has in stock at any given time. Access is all about how far is the nearest grocery store? Do I need a car to get there? Is there public transportation? Do I have access to culturally relevant food? There's something that doesn't get mentioned that often, and that is the utilization or preparation of food. Some folks might not have a full kitchen to cook in, and so they may defer to canned goods or microwavable options. You can have full access to food and still suffer from malnutrition. If you are food secure, that means that you are able to prepare food in clean water and basic sanitation, as well as having the infrastructure to make nutritious food. Stability is the long-term ability to meet food requirements. In other words, you are food secure if you're able to not worry about the next grocery trip. This definition of food security has been widely accepted since the 70s and is the basis for a lot of the food assistance programs that we know today. SNAP, WIC, FreshBucks in Seattle are just a few examples. These programs have done a lot of good over the years. However, at the same time, a growing opposition was taking place. In 1996, La Via Campesina, an international peasant farmer organization, argued at the World Food Summit that food security alone is not enough to solve world hunger. This is where La Via Campesina launched its vision of food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is the people's, country's, or state union's right to define their agricultural and food policy without any dumping vis-a-vis third countries. Let's go a little deeper and explore the 6 pillars of food sovereignty. Food sovereignty focuses on food for people. Food is a right, not a privilege, and instead of seeing food as a commodity to be traded, food is seen as sustenance first. Agricultural business has historically exploited Black and brown lives, and that history still exists today. Food sovereignty asserts food providers' right to live and work in dignity. Local food systems take precedence over supplying large markets. Exports of agriculture are rejected. This means that trading is done locally and with the least amount of impact on the environment. And because everything is localized, so is the power. Food sovereignty puts control locally where the people who are most affected by the food system have the most power and say. Today, many of the cultural knowledge of food and farming has been forgotten or rejected. Food sovereignty builds knowledge and skills that are culturally relevant to the community. And lastly, food sovereignty works with nature. Protecting the environment and its natural resources is a requirement for a complete, just food system. At the heart of it, it is giving power back to the people and the community to self-determine their own food system instead of having a corporation or the government to determine that. One thing that La Via Campesina emphasizes is that food sovereignty is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It depends on the people, the space, and how they want to move in that space. So it's not, here's food sovereignty, magically you have a system that works for everyone. It's very different for every case. So, which is better? Food sovereignty sounds great in theory, but it is much harder to implement. It takes a lot of time to organize and get community buy-in. Food security, on the other hand, doesn't consider the people and the environment as part of the food supply chain, which may be causing more harm than intended. One is a political stance, and one is more of a technical idea. Both concepts agree that hunger is something we must address. I believe, if done right, these two concepts don't have to be in conflict with each other. One thing I do know is that we have to educate ourselves. Where does my food come from? Who is growing my food? From there, we can start dreaming of better alternatives to our current food system. Okay, that was a lot. But thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.
Well, that is a wrap on day 1 of CHOMP Summer Camp. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you tune in the rest of the week for more awesome content. Now, don't forget, you can come back and view all of the content that we've been sharing. So if you really want to get up on that zucchini potato fritters recipe, or if you want to know how you can be a part of King Conservation District, maybe you want to tune in to Mikey the Rad Scientist. Well, be sure to check us out at chomplocal.org, and you can check out the resource library and see more of that awesome footage. Again, thank you to our wonderful sponsorship friends, Fremont Brewing and Cafe Vita. I'm Audra Boo, your camp counselor, and I will see you tomorrow and for the rest of the week. Take it easy, y'all.